right, good afternoon, students. My name is Mr. Monroe, and we're going to be looking into two words that describe property of matter, heavier versus lighter. You know, there are a lot of objects that we see around us today, and sometimes our curiosity kind of gets to us, and you might go over and lift something, and you think, well, that's pretty heavy. Then you'll see something else over here, and you'll lift it up, and it could be lighter. You know, for example, I like to keep myself in pretty good condition. So sometimes I mess around with weights. And this particular weight is called a dumbbell. Now, people use dumbbells to lift, exercise, to build strength, to build muscle. On the other hand, there are things that are around that are lighter. For example, this feather is very light. Compared to the dumbbell, this is heavier, this is lighter. Now, to get the kind of exercise I would like to get, I sure wouldn't use this feather, would I? Because it would not give me enough resistance to build any muscles or build any physical strength. But the dumbbell being heavier, it definitely would. So there are a lot of things in our world today that are lighter and heavier. As we go through the rest of my presentation, I want you to be thinking about two things so that you will be able to answer some questions if your teacher asks you later on. For example, when we're talking about heavier and lighter, we're talking about weight. Now, you need to know what weight means. Weight is how heavy an object is or how heavy a person is, okay? Now, does it always happen that something bigger than another object is always heavier? The larger object being heavier all the time. Well, we're going to go through that and look at that and see if that's a possibility too. Now, listen, students. Sometimes it's pretty hard to determine whether an object is heavier or lighter. Take, for example, I have two small rocks here. They're almost the same size. I can put them in my hand and try to determine which is heavier and which is lighter, and it's very difficult. So I'm going to use a scientific tool called a pan balance to figure which is heavier and which is lighter. Now, this pan balance actually may be like the one that you have in your classroom, okay? I'm going to turn the camera down just a little bit so you can see this. It's kind of moving back and forth. Now, there are no objects in the pans. These are the pans. I like to call them boxes because these appear to be boxes. So I'm going to put one of the rocks in this box. And we can see that it goes down. That means this side is heavier. There's nothing in this side yet. So I'm going to put the other rock that we're comparing with into this one. Let's see which one is heavier. And that's pretty close there. That is real close. Golly. Well, let's see. This one is down just a little bit. So this one probably is a little bit heavier than this side. Well, let's try two other rocks. Now let's talk about a bigger rock. That's a bigger rock as compared to this small rock. And I'm going to put this bigger rock on this side and the smaller rock on this side. Wow. In this case, the smaller rock is heavier than the bigger rock. You know, there it goes. Just because something is larger than another object doesn't necessarily mean it's going to weigh more. You know what the secret is? The secret is, what are the objects made of? What kind of matter makes up that object? And I can tell you, this rock right here, it's a very special rock. And I'll show you what I mean by that. I have a container that has water in it. You guys see that? Yeah. Now, I'm going to put the smaller rock, which we determined that it was heavier, right? And we're going to watch what happens when I put it in the water. Wow, it sunk to the bottom. Now we're going to put the larger rock in there and see what happens with it. Did you see that? That rock floats. Have you ever heard of a rock that floats? Well, you know what determined that, or what made that happen? It's because this rock is made up of a lighter type of matter, okay? It's not the same matter that's making up the other rock that sunk completely to the bottom. So that goes to show you, just because an object is larger than another object, it doesn't mean that that larger object is going to be heavier than the smaller object, okay? Now, I've got two little friends that I'm going to get out, and I'm going to show you my little friends so that we can go over this again about heavier and lighter. Hoppy Sr. and Hoppy Jr., they're going to help me out. I bet you guys know what animals I'm talking about because their names are Hoppy. And they're not a rabbit. You know, rabbits hop around. But these animals have the ability to hop around too. So let me get them out and let's look at them. This is Hoppy Sr., this is Hoppy Jr. They are bullfrogs. Now, Hoppy Sr., we can look at him and it goes back to what Miss Ramirez was talking about, bigger and smaller. But I can tell you that the way that they're feeling, Hoppy Sr. is heavier than Hoppy Jr. It would be almost impossible for us to put these two animals in that pan balance to get an accurate measurement of how they compare to each other as far as being heavier and lighter, because they wouldn't sit still very long. They would hop right out of those pans and be hopping all over this room, and they would be driving Mr. Monroe crazy trying for me trying to catch them and put them back in the right place. But this is Hoppy Sr. He's bigger in this case, and he's heavier. And this is Hoppy Jr., who's smaller, and he is lighter. Probably because Hoppy Sr. has really consumed or eaten a lot of bugs during his time. Not as many. This guy hasn't eaten as many as Hoppy Sr. Let me put them up. Now, a lot of times there are some other tools that we can use to figure out how heavy or how light some objects are. They are called scales. I'm going to start by showing you what they call a bathroom scale. Now, this bathroom scale would be on the floor, and if I wanted to find out, remember what weight means, how much a person weighs or how much an object weighs. If I wanted to find out how much I weigh, I would stand on this bathroom scale, both feet on it, stand perfectly still, and it would tell you how much I weigh. On the other hand, there's a different type of scale. Well, probably used for smaller objects that you could hook onto, and you'd hook the hook in that whatever object you're weighing, and it's spring loaded. It's a spring scale. And the weight of the object that you would be weighing would pull the spring down, and it would have a little marker that would show the number or measurement of how much that object weighs. Also, another type of scale. For example, this is a spring scale also, and it has a pan on it, and it also has a dial to show how much the object is weighing. I'm going to take this ball and put it in there, and this ball weighs, oh, let's see here. Let me turn this around so I can read it right. Oh, maybe about 5 kilograms. I believe that's what it's saying, 6. Let's make a comparison. I have a golf ball here, and I'm going to put it in there, and let's see how much it weighs. Oh, wow. Doesn't weigh as much as the bigger object does. So in this case, the larger one weighs more, the smaller one weighs less. Heavier, lighter. Now, there are some scales in our world today that are very large. There are some scales that are used along the highways in our state and in the United States. They weigh the weight of 18 wheelers and their loads because they don't want these big semi trucks carrying loads down the highway that are overloaded, might be dangerous. So these big scales will weigh the amount that an 18 wheeler weighs with the load that it is carrying down the highway. Now, students, listen, heavier or lighter. There are scientific tools that will help us determine that. Very important name or words to describe the property of matter.